to be able to just make a choice on your own and just be able to speak for yourself.
This One's Wife, the dishwasher commercial, again. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. It's fair to say that I've led a very interesting life. Much of it I can't yet tell you about. And I've also met some very interesting people, both in what I've done on a day-to-day basis, and also because of connections that I have, I've often been invited to dinners and events where certain people have been speaking, or there's been an opportunity to ask questions of them, and in some instances meet them and spend time talking with them. I've been to many of these things, turning out in the old dinner jacket, of course, making sure that it is an appropriate collar for black tie, not winged, that's for white tie, it's a fold-down collar for black tie, with 2 stripes on the trousers, 1 stripe for white tie. Anyway, those matters of etiquette to one side. There are numerous speakers that I've listened to and spoken with that have proven interesting. Just a few examples. William Hague, who used to be the leader of the Conservative Party. Whatever you might think about his politics, he's a very knowledgeable man and has many interesting and witty anecdotes. Christopher Hitchens, personal hero of mine. Nothing like seeing somebody getting hitch-slapped by the master orator. Fascinating individual. A fantastic raconteur and wit, Peter Ustinov. Mandy Hickson, who was in the RAF. Very interesting experiences that she has relayed, showing the resilience and grit and determination that she has. Duncan McKenzie, a former footballer who played for Everton. Rather witty and understated portrayal of his escapades in football. Kenneth Cranham, the actor, who some of you may recall from Layer Cake and earlier from the series Shine on Harvey Moon. He's done a lot more than that, and very interesting individual talking about his acting career. And also Kate Adie, the journalist, who basically, if somebody shouted risk, she'd go where and turn up, as she often reported on war-torn environments. Very determined lady, and often an excellent choice for International Women's Day. Now, all of those speakers had different styles. They had different backgrounds, different experiences, different levels of interact. But what they all were was engaging and interesting. When they spoke, people listened. Nobody was checking their wristwatch or fiddling with their phone. Nobody was talking to the person next to them. Nobody was trying to catch the eye of the waitress to order another drink. They listened, and they were entertained. They were given knowledge that you wouldn't ordinarily have. You were given insight into a world that you may not be familiar with. In many instances, you also had a laugh at what they conveyed to you, often with self-deprecating humour. They understood the value of recognising their audience, concocting a speech that was at just the right length so that the audience remained engaged, whilst you felt that you had learnt something, that you'd got to know them in some way, that you felt that you understood more about what they had been involved in, the world that they were involved in, without it being self-indulgent and boring. This One's Wife would do well to learn from those people and many others that exist in the world who are excellent after-dinner speakers. She is not one of them. She believes herself to be because her narcissism tells her that she's brilliant at it. And the fact is, she's actually a rather dull and boring individual. She's had some acting gigs, she was in Suits. Beyond that, there's not a lot that she can talk about other than going on about, I went to this place, I went to that place. But even though she has travelled to different countries, she's been a member of the royal family, that she has met people in different organisations, when it comes to her talking about her experiences, as I often say, she could send a glass eye to sleep. And that's because she's useless at conveying the experiences. so that it matters to other people, because all that matters to her is talking about herself. Now, there are many narcissists who are more evolved than her who are fantastic after-dinner speakers. There are narcissists that are witty, engaging, fascinating individuals who talk about their experiences, their rise to power, the businesses they've created, the sporting endeavours that they've engaged in, and they really draw in the audience. People hang on their every word because they have the charisma and the ability to engage with people as part of the way that they control those people and draw fuel from them. This one's wife has to rely upon a captive audience, that they're sat there politely listening. She hasn't got anything about her in terms of understanding that audience because she's not interested in that audience. Not only does she have no emotional empathy, she lacks the intellectual ability to understand who she's talking to. So she just talks about herself and regurgitates things that we've heard time and time before, which were boring in the first instance, but she doesn't recognize that it's boring. And thus, once again, the world was subjected to the dishwasher commercial story. Yes. As reported, one topic of conversation was how society can work towards making the world more equitable, a discussion that this one's wife began by noting the importance of representation for young girls. If you're a young girl and you see yourself in a position of power or strength or leadership, you can believe that it's possible, she said, stating the obvious. If you look out on the screen or look out in the world and you see no one that looks like you, it is incomprehensible for most people to imagine that they can have that level of success or joy or strength. No idea what that's meant to mean. Former Today anchor Katie Couric then asked this one's wife if she would retell the story about when you wrote that letter to Procter & Gamble. I suspect that Katie Couric was taking the piss when she was doing this, because she must know that it's boring and dull and it's been overdone to death. She was referring to an anecdote that the Duchess has told on multiple occasions about fighting against a sexist Procter & Gamble commercial when she was 11 years old. I don't know if everyone's heard it, but it's such a great story at a very young age, Katie went on, possibly laughing down her sleeve, before apologising for disrupting the flow of the panel. Beaming with pride, or rather, Richard's grin on display as a consequence of the receipt of fuel and that she was the centre of attention, this one's wife happily agreed to share the story with the crowd, whilst there was the sound of people slitting their wrists. She'd mentioned it at multiple events over the years. I was 11 years old, about 11 years old, and I had seen a commercial on TV for a dishwashing liquid. And the boys in my class at the time, it said, women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans. And the boys said, yeah, that's where women belong, in the kitchen, this one's wife recalled. And at 11, I just found that infuriating. And so I ended up writing lots of letters. I put pen to paper, and they ended up changing the commercial to people all over America. Now, of course, what she omits to say is that it was part of a class project. And once again, she has lied about something. She has engaged in a revision of history. She has stolen the credit of other people and made it all about her, which, of course, is demonstrative of her sense of entitlement. But also, she trots out this anecdote. Admittedly, she was invited to do so. But what she might have done was say, no, I'm not going to. Everybody knows about that. Here's a different story that I've got for you about female empowerment. But do you know what? She can't do that because of two things. One, she can't think on her feet because she's not very bright. And two, she hasn't really got many stories to tell because she's boring. And thus, we just end up having to listen to her bang on about the false anecdote once again, as around the world there was much groaning at not this again. But of course, this one's wife can't pick up on that. She doesn't realise that people not only are bored of it, but don't accept its validity because it was a class project and not actually something she did on her own. She can't comprehend that because she has no emotional empathy and hasn't learned to read the room in the way that a more evolved narcissist would. And instead, she trots it out again, causing various people to slip into comas. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.